Robert Eggers' Nosferatu reimagines Orlok's death scene and the final confrontation between Ellen and the vampire. It shifts away from the original 1922 film's simplistic vampire destruction and turns it into something far more ritualistic. In this version, Ellen does not just sacrifice herself to kill Orlok. She willingly binds herself to him in a ceremonial act, culminating in his death. Their relationship is neither romance nor mere predation. Instead, it follows a pattern closer to an ancient ritual between a being of darkness and its chosen counterpart. In the film's climax, Ellen invokes a sacred oath before offering herself to Orlok. Unlike in traditional vampire lore where the victim is attacked, Ellen actively participates in the process, speaking what seems to be an incantation before allowing Orlok to drink from her. This suggests that her role was predetermined, that Orlok was not merely feeding, but completing a ritual that required her voluntary submission. Lily Rose Depp stated the following: "This young woman is repulsed by him and petrified and horrified, but at the same time, there is a longing there. She's breaking the curse, but she's also indulging in a dark desire." This is not a seduction in the traditional vampire sense. It resembles a pact or a completion of fate, a submission to an inevitable role rather than a mere act of consumption. Unlike most vampires who struggle or flee from the sun, Orlok stares directly into it, making no effort to escape. His final moments are marked not by fear, but by an almost hypnotic surrender, as though he knew this was the conclusion all along. Bill Skarsgård emphasized this during interviews, describing Orlok's death as a moment of death and ecstasy, where he simultaneously experiences awe, fear, and fulfillment. Unlike other versions of Dracula, where the vampire is killed by force, Orlok's destruction feels more like a natural culmination of events rather than a defeat. Bill Skarsgård stated, "He's seeing the sun for the first time in hundreds of years. He's mesmerized by it, and fear and all of these different things. And in a way, maybe that is what Orlok wanted all along." Orlok does not fight against his demise, nor does he seem to be tricked into it. Instead, his existence appears to be tied to a cycle, one that Ellen has willingly completed by offering herself. The film's final image of Ellen and Orlok visually reinforces the idea that this was not merely a death scene, but a conclusion to an unnatural bond. Ellen dies smiling, her body untouched by decay, as though she has achieved peace. Orlok, by contrast, collapses into a skeletal form, his body turning to dust, while hers remains pristine. Robert Eggers intentionally framed this contrast, emphasizing the death and the maiden motif, an artistic tradition where a young woman embraces death as though it were a predestined lover. Rather than portraying Ellen as a mere victim, the film suggests that her role was always intertwined with Orlok's fate. Robert Eggers said, "When you see Lily Rose looking like a doll and Bill looking like a skull with a mustache, it's a powerful contrast. The way Ellen's body remains whole while Orlok disintegrates suggests that she was never simply food for him. She was part of his cycle. The sun does not just kill him, it finalizes whatever supernatural connection existed between them." Orlok's connection to Ellen is unlike Dracula's seductions in Stoker's novel. In many vampire stories, the vampire pursues his victim out of lust or hunger. In Nosferatu, Orlok does not merely seek Ellen. He seems bound to her in a way that neither can fully control. Skarsgård clarified that Orlok's need for Ellen is not love, but something far more primal, an inescapable force that draws them together. He said, "It isn't love, it's something else, but love is maybe the closest thing to it that you can kind of relate to. If it's not love, it's a craving, and it's an appetite, and it's lust and desire to devour." This description aligns not with traditional vampire stories, but with demonic possession narratives, where a supernatural being fixates on an individual, seeking to consume or merge with them rather than simply feeding. Unlike traditional vampires, who are killed as enemies, Orlok accepts his destruction without resistance. Eggers presents Orlok as a creature that exists within a cycle, one that always ends with his annihilation after binding himself to a chosen victim. Orlok does not panic or attempt to flee. He does not resist Ellen's invitation, instead submitting to it. He gazes into the sun, almost as if he recognizes that his existence was always temporary. This is not a standard vampire death. It is a conclusion that was written into Orlok's very nature. His cycle ends with the ritualistic exchange of blood and his dissolution in sunlight. But it is Ellen who completes it, not a hunter or an outside force. So what do you make of my analysis, and do you have any further theories? Please leave a comment below. Also, check out the I'm Fine t-shirt in our store, the perfect gift for sci-fi fans. Until next time, stay frosty and alert.